of your eyesight. So we'll talk about this one first. And this one is this one's hard to sell. It's called Bidwillii coral tree. It was developed in Australia. You can tell kind of by the name, but it's a hybrid of two American species, or North and South American species. And it's one of the smaller coral trees. Unfortunately, it doesn't even look like a tree when you buy it. So generally, unless it's in a 36-inch box, which is difficult to move and transport, this looks like a bush, looks like a giant penstemon bush. So upon planting this, you get kind of the straightest stem going straight up. And as it grows, you can start cutting off the lower branches and make a tree out of it. So in general, at our older store, we had one that had a 3-foot trunk, and then the branches came out. You can walk underneath it. And it got to about 12 foot tall, maybe 20 foot wide, and pretty much year round it would send out spikes of flowers that on a mature tree would be 6 foot. So just brilliant red flowers pretty much throughout the year. I mean, the tree would always have a few flowers showing at all times, and sometimes the whole tree would be in bloom. And it does it year round, which is amazing, but it just hard sell for us. I mean, we've had a few customers buy these, and they always come back in and rave about the tree because it doesn't stop blooming. It's absolutely fantastic looking, and it's not too big. Again, for a coral tree, this is small, so 12 foot by about 20 foot. And the trunk, we had one that was about 10 years old. The trunk was about this size. Now, some of the bigger coral trees are disastrous in most small gardens. They would lift up everything, cause all these problems, and the bigger coral trees tend to split and fall apart, but this one, too small to cause trouble. So that's the Bidwillii coral tree. The proper name is Erythrina cross Bidwillii. Now, if you're in Florida or Texas, most of the eastern states, United States, they can use this in the deep south, but it does freeze to the ground every winter. So in those areas, it's just a 5 foot by 10 foot bush because it freezes to the ground, then it grows back, blooms all summer, freezes to the ground. Here, they don't freeze. Orange County, San Diego County, LA County, and it does become a small tree. So one of the nicer plants, I'm going to take this out of here, get it out of the way. Oh, the only bad thing I can say is that the leaves are like rose leaves and they have a spine on them. So that's the nasty part. They don't have spines on the trunk or anything, but, well, occasionally. On the younger branches, you'll see spines, but the trunk is smooth. So once it gets some size, the little thorns won't bother you at all, but there are some on the leaves, just like rose leaves have. Okay, we'll pull this out of the way. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Actually, there's a spot right to the right of the moringa tree where that goes. Okay. This tree we do like a lot. Now, this is a peppermint willow or peppermint tree, agonis. And this is the version called After Dark. The original tree, which has green leaves, tends to be real willowy. It's evergreen. The leaves come up, they come down to the ground. Beautiful tree, but the original one grows 35 foot high and wide. Gets big. Now these are evergreen. They have little white flowers. All of them have little white flowers, which are not super showy, but nice. Now when we first started getting these from other growers, the plants were brittle and somewhat difficult to manage, but when we started growing them in our own soil, suddenly we can't hurt them anymore. So they seem to be much stronger when they're in better dirt than the growers are using. So we change all the soil on them when they're young, get them going. Beautiful trees. You will have to stake them up initially so that they don't just weep to the ground. And then as they grow, you just cut off the bottom branches. They grow fast. This tree is probably about 2 to 3 years old right now, so not bad. Height-wise, the book says up to 20, 25. I really haven't seen anything above about 12 foot, but I'll put down 15 foot tall and maybe 12 foot wide. They're not aggressive growers like the original green version, but that is one of the nicer trees we've seen. And you know, these if it's in too much shade, they tend to turn a little bit greener, but in general it's I would just say burgundy leafed.
Does it flower?
Little white flowers, and then it makes the little white flowers become little woody seed capsules, like other members of the myrtle family. So the eucalyptus make these little woody capsules, originally from Australia. Okay, the next family we like, it's native around the world. These are the redbuds. And there's some really pretty ones. The redbud, because they make, I've not seen one with a pure red flower, pink flowers. The botanical name is Cercis. The one that's most common in the area is the western redbud, which is this one here. That's Cercis occidentalis. And it's usually grown as a multi-trunk tree to maybe 10 to 15 foot high and wide. So they drop their leaves. The leaves turn yellow in December. They drop in about March, mid-March. The bare stems light up with little tiny clusters, hundreds of little tiny, kind of a neon pink flower. They're actually deep pink and light pink, or white mixed together. The overall effect is medium pink. It's a light pink. And then after that, the leaves come on, and they stay this color all year. Now, the one negative thing about the western redbud is they tend to make a lot of brown seed pods, which some books say add interest. I would say not so much. The seed pods are about that size. They hang in clusters and they're brown. So they're not all that attractive. But it is a native to California, not to Orange County, but to California in general. So it is used a lot in the native landscapes, especially along the roads, because it doesn't get that big. Now, redbuds don't get that big because they don't live that long. So a lot of the small trees that we sell that stay small, never cause any problems with sidewalks or anything, is mainly because they don't live that long. So 20 years to 30 years is about normal. Now the eastern redbuds are more spectacular, I think. So the most popular redbud being sold is this one called forest pansy. This is Cercis canadensis. Forest pan. There's a lot of new ones coming out that have similar leaves, but you can see the size of the leaves gets pretty good sized leaves. They start out purple, a nice glossy on the very new growth. Well, of course, they start off with their flowers, same flowers, kind of a blush pink, and then the leaves come out purple. They will change to kind of a bronzy green if we have extended 85-degree plus weather. So if you're in most parts of the country, like the Midwest or the Deep South or even the Central Valley, California, they say they rarely see any purple on this tree at all. Because once you get to April, May weather, it's already 85 degrees and the leaves just fade to green. Here, this color can persist until August some years. I've seen it go through the entire summer, like last year would have been no problem. We just didn't get any hot weather. But normally they would stay purple through July, and then that would be it. The rest of the year kind of a dirty bronzy green. They do grow a similar shape, but they are bigger. So you can say 12 to 20 foot high and wide. You're supposed to get bigger than that, but most of the ones I see in my neighborhood are about 10, 12 foot. I have seen a few that are two-story, up to the two-story windows, which is 18 foot, 20 foot. So it's a bigger one. And then this one, harder to get. We finally got it this year. We love it. This is Mexican redbud, which is Cercis canadensis. So it's eastern species because it is native to the east coast of North America, southern Texas down through Mexico. So same species as the forest pansy. But we love the foliage on this. So same color flowers, really glossy, ripply leaves. And overall effect has been a little more open. So the western redbud and the forest pansy redwood, when they have a full canopy, it's pretty dark underneath there. This one lets a little more light through, which we do like a lot. It's a very airy appearance. So it's airy. It does shade, but it's airy. It's not heavy looking. So we do like it. And it is a little smaller, say 15 foot tall by 10 foot to 12 foot wide. And not quite as spreading. It tends to grow a little more up than out. So that's your Mexican redbud. Just love this plant. Perfect for, near a patio or courtyard. Happy to have again this year. This one, we're selling it for $64. And we did grow 10 of these this year, so I have 9 more out. Well, I've got about 6 outside. We have some that are growing ground still. Okay, here's another native. So this one's called desert willow. Chelopsis bubba. Now, it's not related to the normal willows at all. It is a deciduous tree, so it drops its leaves in December, gets them back around April. So it wakes up a little bit late. It is related to jacaranda. You can kind of see that in the flowers. or the trumpet vine family. That family has a lot of gorgeous trees in the vine family, the trumpet vine family. So this will bloom, gosh, over and over and over. So what it tends to do is it wakes up, grows a few inches, blooms, grows another few inches, blooms, grows another few inches, blooms. It just keeps doing that all year and through October. So it's in color a lot. Now, most of the other desert willows, the problem we have with them, and they come in different colors, pink, white, burgundy, almost purple. Most of the desert willows spend a lot of their energy and time making seed pods. And the seed pods look like shoestrings hanging down on the tree, so it's a little messy looking. This one, if it's all by itself, we just don't see any. It might start making when it's more mature and older, but now if you put this next to a different kind of desert willow, sometimes it makes seed pods too, but it never makes as much as the other ones. So the other ones, what you do is you spend your time cutting them off, because if it's making seeds, it's not blooming. This one is pretty sterile, so the flowers kind of just fail. They don't make seed pods, so they keep on trying. They keep on blooming over and over and over. And on this one too, the leaves are a little bit broader than on the other desert willows. The other desert willows are a little bit thinner leafed. Generally, they grow kind of in a regular form. 15 by 12 is normal. They can grow twice that size, but I just haven't seen them get that big here. They're native to the eastern side of California in the desert areas along stream beds, all the way to western Texas. And this one was developed at an arboretum in Texas, or found in an arboretum in Texas. So quite drought tolerant when they're established. They do look better and bloom better if you water them. In most of their range, they're in a monsoonal rain pattern, which is dry winters and wet summers. So they're more used to that than they are the California West Coast climate, which is wet winters and dry summers. So. Okay. This is spectacular. So this is Brugmansia, or angel's trumpet. Yeah, they can make, there are some varieties of this that have 12 to 16 inch long flowers. This used to be called Datura, now it's called Brugmansia, and it's native throughout tropical America. This particular one is Charles Grimaldi, which is the most famous one. In fact, there's a house a few streets to this side that's painted essentially this color, and they got one of these in front of it. It matches the house. It's real interesting. So these can grow, they kind of grow upright, irregular form. 15 to 20 foot high by maybe 10 to 15 wide. And they bloom on and off year round. Each bloom tends to last over a month, and they take a month off, and then each bloom tends to last another month. So they keep on going. Now, they're not really good container plants unless you just keep fertilizing and fertilizing and fertilizing. You put these in the ground. I had some in the ground at my house. Never touched it. I never even watered it. I mean, it was on a moist side of my house. It just kept growing. It wanted to be 10 by 10 in about, they do that in about 8 months. They're fast. They're in the same family as tomatoes. So now they are considered poisonous in some books. Other books tell you, no, they're actually narcotic. So we had an employee who was half Indian or half Native American. Got to say that, or half Native, yeah, half Native American. And they said, yeah, they have rituals where you use that for Yeah, you can see your ancestors. So.
But those smells really good.
Oh yeah. So right, no fragrance during the day. The fragrance turns on as soon as the sun sets and lasts about 2 to 3 hours beyond that. And it's really powerful. I had 5 of these outside my kitchen window, and we couldn't taste our food, so we'd have to close the window at night so that we didn't smell. The whole kitchen smelled like this. Real nice, perfumey fragrance. And they do come gold, white, pink, and there are double flowered ones too, where they have instead of a single trumpet, they've got trumpets coming out of trumpets. And that's a double one. We have some out here, I believe. They are subject to some. If you live near a wilderness area, they are subject to some beetle damage from beetles that can eat on the native daturas, which are called, I think, Jimson weed. And they do say if cattle eat them, they go crazy. So. Okay. Now this one you probably recognize because they're a common big tree, but this is the dwarf version. So this is jacaranda bonsai blue. And this was discovered growing in Japan. They're native to South America. So there's a lot of species of jacarandas, and we don't know exactly which species this is, because it's definitely not like the regular jacaranda mimosifoli, which grows 30, 40 foot tall and wide and blooms this time of year. This thing can bloom a lot longer than the original one, the big one. It's got a little bit deeper blue flower, kind of purplish blue flower. In Japan, it was a 2-foot bush. When they brought to California, they said, okay, maybe 8 foot. Now they're saying, well, maybe 12 foot. So it's a little bigger than, well, it's bigger than they originally claimed, but still a good small tree for a courtyard container. Just like the other jacarandas, but for a young, regular jacaranda trees will not bloom at this size. They've got to grow 10, 12 foot before they start flowering. This one, again, will bloom at a real small size. So if you wanted to, you can cut it, after the bloom's over, first round of blooms over, you cut it down here and let it re-sprout. Keep it small. You can, but it's well, you can probably do this one because it is slower growing. This one's about 3 or 4, so they're kind of slow growing. Okay. This is a nice small tree. This is Caribbean copper plant. It is the euphorbia. Same family as poinsettias, the euphorbia. Cotinifolia means it's got leaves like the other plant that has purple leaves. What was it called? Can't remember the name of that one now. But there's another plant with a similar foliage. This one is not evergreen, so it's also deciduous. Now the jacaranda is bare too right before it blooms. It goes through a bare stage in the winter. So this one drops its leaves around January. It doesn't really want to go bare because it's from the tropics. But by January, it usually gives up and drops its foliage, and then they get their leaves back on usually around April. Flowers are just tiny, not really significant. But the foliage color really glows. I mean, you can see how it compares to most of the purple leaf trees. The warmer it gets, the brighter the color. So it's really a glowing burgundy. And the color never changes. So it stays like this all year. and it'll drop its foliage again in around early winter. And size-wise, they're pretty nice, 10 to 15 foot tall, maybe 8 to 10 foot wide, and pretty much shaped kind of an oval. I've seen them used next to olive trees and magnolias. They look real good next to both of those. So, not real drought tolerant, but not bad. It's kind of a normal watering. Most trees are generally better than bushes are as far as taking low water. Let's talk about, okay, so we talked about the Chalopsis that was related to jacarandas. Here's another member of the family that we really like. So this is the pink trumpet tree, which is Bidwillii. Now we're not sure what the species is. We will label it Impetigonosa, which is the first name I've ever heard of it. But there are, the family of Bidwillii are trumpet trees. They're yellow. Most of them are pink. And there's supposed to be 5 species of pink trumpet trees that are hard to tell apart, but they all do different things. So like the pink trumpet tree that most nurseries sell grows 30 foot, just like a jacaranda, 40 foot. You'll see them blooming in the spring here with these mauvey pink flowers. This one only grows 15 foot. So we grow the dwarf pink trumpet tree. So we'll figure 15 foot to 18 foot tall by 15 foot to 18 foot wide. It kind of is shaped like that. And the way you tell this is a dwarf is that they start branching when they're that tall. So we had to cut off, well, we don't have to cut them. Well, we'll probably end up cutting this one off too. So it tends to branch. Whereas if you get a regular pink trumpet tree, they're all a 6 foot straight trunk before they branch, just like regular jacarandas do. They grow 6 foot straight up and then branch. Then you know you got the big one. So these are at least close to being evergreen. They're never bare for very long, so they are green through the summer and fall and winter. And then usually they're February, March, they start making their flower buds. And then right when they're about to open their flowers, all the leaves just drop. And then they're in full bloom for about 2 months of just these pink trumpet flowers they can be from medium pink to deep pink, even slightly lavender pink on some of them. And most of them have a little fragrance also that's nice, kind of a vanilla-like fragrance. So they're nice trees. Now, at this size, they make, like 20 flowers. It's not much show. The first time I planted this back in the 80s, I had a tree just about this same size put in the ground. First 3 years in the ground, it just wasn't much show. I told the tree, I said, you got to do something here, or else, you're coming out of the ground, because I had seen the bigger versions of this at the LA Arboretum, really liked it. And then that 4th year, we had a really bad frost in December. That was 1990. And this tree bloomed from late January to early April that year, just totally covered in pink flowers. I said, okay, you just earned your spot in the garden. And from that point on, it bloomed really, really well every winter, late winter, early spring. So, yeah, it's got 1 seed pod. That's how we grow them from seeds. So, yeah, nice. So, so it's hard to find the dwarf ones. Most nurseries can sell the full size ones that get as big as regular jacaranda, and you'll see them throughout Santa Ana, Orange, this area, Tustin. There's quite a few of them. Most of them are the bigger ones. We try to stick with the small one. Leaf. Now there are different versions. Like in my neighborhood, there's a taller one that blooms mostly in the fall. That's Tabebuia rosea that blooms mostly in the fall. Sometimes it has a spring bloom too, but usually it's the fall bloom. In fact, at our old store, we had one that did the same thing. Bloom mainly in the fall, a little bit in the spring. The biggest versions, one of the local horticulturists, Robert Smouse, told me that his tree was 50 foot and it bloomed 3 times a year. So there are quite a few different ones. We like this one because it stays small. So. Okay, let's talk about the magnolias. Now, most people are familiar with the bigger magnolias with the big white flowers and the big leathery green leaves. We like the smaller ones ourselves better. So here's one of the saucer magnolias, which this one's supposed to have 5-inch blooms that are that color. So we buy these in from a grower up in Oregon that grafts them. So these, a little bit too young to sell yet. We'll probably wait till it's a little bit taller, although if you wanted to buy it, it's fine. They run $99, but that's Magnolia Burgundy Star. Now we're a little hesitant to push this one that much. It'd be nice if we had it for a year and see how it worked. We haven't found any magnolias that don't bloom here. In other words, some deciduous trees require a cold winter to trigger the flower production. We have not seen that on any magnolia yet, but we don't know for sure if it's true with all of them. But every magnolia that we've had in the past of the deciduous types, these are originally from Asia, from China, have bloomed for us. Ones we got from Oregon, from California, from other nurseries around the area, they seem to bloom just fine here. So we're not sure they actually need the cold to trigger that. The most famous of the magnolias is one called Alexandrina. And that one, unfortunately, I don't have a source of small trees for it. But in Southern California, we've seen Alexandrina bloom with large, deep pink flowers from Thanksgiving to Easter. So they have a longer bloom period, whereas most of the other magnolias, same number of flowers, but all at one time in the spring. So, a week or so. They're not short-lived. The magnolia flowers are pretty substantial. There are types, I think Jeannie's one that's a deep, almost purple flower that can bloom in spring and again in summer. We've had some customers tell us that theirs did do the 2 blooms a year. So there's a lot of magnolias out there that we try to get of. It's not easy to get these. Most growers won't sell them until they're in 24-inch boxes, and the price on them is so high we don't like to carry them. Plus, they have to be in good soil to keep the leaves green. So we grow them in our top pot. For most growers, the soil, if it's got a lot of compost in it, the leaves always get the brown edges in the summer and they look terrible. So be careful where you buy the deciduous magnolias from. They can be nice, or so a lot of the books used to tell us, you put this in a place where you can see the flowers, but not be in full sight of the summer foliage, because again, for most growers, it's ugly. It's all brown tipped, and I guess they didn't get that that was caused by the soil that most growers use now, and not normal for the plant. Now, we have a selection of seed-grown ones. So we grew these from seed. There's a lot of local trees, and we picked off the seed pods off of trees that were blooming a nice deep pink. So we hope that these, when they finally get open, like this is grafted, so it can bloom at this size next year. Seedlings, we've had this now for 3.5 years and it hasn't bloomed yet. Most seedlings don't bloom when they're young, although hopefully it'll bloom by next year. We expect the flowers to be pink, but again, they can range anywhere from white to purple. The most common color is light pink. Light pink on the outside of the flower and white on the inside is most common. So that's probably what color they'll come out. But we've been watching these that are ground. You know, they're perfect. No brown leaves in the summer. And we made them less expensive, $39, because they're seedlings and we don't know what color they're going to be. But they should still be pretty and they'll be healthy. So, yeah, so this would be the regular, well, the species Solangiana, which is, this family is the saucer magnolias. So they're all known as saucer magnolias. They got the big flowers on them. And we expect it to be a spring bloom, but again, you know, being a seedling, we just don't know what's going to happen. We grew about 15 or so of these. So we have a selection. Most of them look very similar, though. Okay, the other magnolias. So the magnolia family in Asia is quite large. Magnolias are also native to North and South America. So it's a huge family. I guess it's pretty much found throughout the world. Mostly in the tropics, some in the southern temperate zones. This used to be called Michelia, but now most of the family has been changed to magnolias because they can't distinguish any difference. So you look at a Michelia and it looks just like a miniature southern magnolia. Everything about it, same blooms except smaller. So flowers only about this big. So this is Michelia figo, and the variety name is Hagiwara. And the common name for these are banana shrub. Some people the people who named this says what smells, the flower perfume smell like bananas. I would tell it's not banana, it is perfect juicy fruit gum. So if you've ever know what juicy fruit gum tastes like, that's the smell of this plant. And this one was in bloom all spring, but it's taken a little time off now. I see more flower buds forming. So here's one there. So a mature plant can bloom like a regular magnolia does, southern magnolia. They'll bloom 9 months of the year. And this one can make it to about 15 foot tall. You can make it into a single trunk. I had one at my last house with the trunk about this high and then a head about 6 to 8 foot wide, and maybe top of it was right around 15 foot. Beautiful plant, evergreen. The leaves last a long time. The flowers, fragrant. They're attractive, but they're small. So they're kind of banana colored flowers with a little bit of pink or ruby inside of them. So that's Hagiwara. The one we're even more excited about is this one. This one is Stellar Ruby. It may not bloom quite as long, maybe half the year in bloom. Now, this was in bloom all spring too, and the flowers were magenta to almost, well, real deep magenta color. So they were striking. I don't think there's any left on it at the moment. It is got a denser foliage, and the mature leaves are dark green. So very pretty plant. One of our customers told us it wasn't as fragrant as the regular, so she traded back in for one of these. I don't know. I think they're just as fragrant. Slower growing, unfortunately. So this plant's probably 4 or 5 years old, so they're quite expensive because it takes us forever to grow these things to size. $89 on this one. Well, they're all the entire magnolia family is kind of on the slow side, but this one's gorgeous. Now the book says 10 foot, 12 foot, so it's not going to get as tall, and it's certainly slower. But it's you know, on the internet they show the form of it is naturally kind of cone shaped or spindle shaped. So it's a absolutely beautiful plant, good in containers or in the ground. Never gets too big to become a problem. And the fragrance, boy, that's one of the fragrances that are unforgettable. Heaviest in spring, but they can bloom anytime they want. Yeah. About half the year for that one, and this one, the most magnolias bloom spring through fall and don't bloom in winter. No. I'm not sure what gardenias are. I mean, a gardenia, you can train some of them into tree form. There are some that get tall enough. So that could work, but that would take, they're, well, not much different time-wise than these. They're slow too. Now, a real famous member of this family is called Michelia. Michelia champaka, which is famous in Vietnam and that area of the world. I have one in the nursery. It gets bigger though. It's not really a small tree. It gets around 20 foot, maybe 30 foot. Flowers are a light cream color, star-like. It blooms again about 9 months of the year, and it's a very famous perfume. So there's a industry, I don't know if it's still in Vietnam or not, where they harvest the flower petals and send the perfume to France, where they make I can't remember the name of the perfume. I don't remember. But they said it's $300 an ounce. So it's interesting. You come to Orange County, especially if you go to Little Singapore area, everybody's got this tree growing there. And they said the reason they do it, they told me the reason they do it is because in Vietnam, they're not allowed to own the tree. It's too valuable to the government. So when they came to California, they said, oh, we can own this tree now, so we're going to own it. So there's temples in that area that's surrounded by this hedges of it. It's a symbol of freedom, I guess. We have one, not a real pretty one, underneath our shade structure, yes. I think it's around $200, but I'm not positive. And, you know, it's a huge family. Michelia, magnolia, huge family. So someone just told me that they had gotten another tree from China that was really difficult to get, that also blooms much of the year with really nice fragrance. And they're asking me how to propagate it. Some of these things are just not easy to propagate. So magnolia generally is slow to start from seed, and not easy from cuttings either. So Well, they can live in Sacramento. They can go down into the low 30s, even high 20s. Right. Yes. They reclassified as magnolias because they can't see any difference. You know, everything about them, the seed pods, everything looks like the other magnolias. I don't have that one. Elon, don't carry that. Okay, let's now the most common tree used, especially in malls right now, is this. It's the Palo verde. And we're lucky to get these, so we changed it to our soil to see how it would respond, and it looks a lot greener, a lot deeper green. Now this tree has had some trouble the last 2 years because this tree was created, you're not sure if they hybridized it or if it's a natural hybrid between 3 species of Circidiums or Parkinsonia. Parkinsonia is, I guess, a Mexican native Circidium, floridum, and 2 other closely related plants. They hybridized it to get this one. The reason they like this one better of most is the other ones tend to have thorns, and this one doesn't have any thorns. Plus the leaf stems. So on this plant, this is 1 leaf, or that's actually 2 leaves. That's a single leaf. On the original Parkinsonia, the leaves are about this long, which looks more graceful to us, but when the dead leaves fall off, they leave these strings on the ground all underneath the tree, whereas this one, everything's so small that when the dead leaves fall on the ground, you don't see anything. So they consider this cleaner in malls and things like that, shopping centers. But the big false thing about this, so it is a desert tree, it is drought resistant, but it needs water to bloom. So the area of the world it comes from, Sonoran Desert, Texas, northern Mexico, monsoonal country. We get rain in the winter. There, they get their rain in the summer. They say Phoenix gets 10 inches of rain during the summer months. And that's what this tree needs to keep blooming. So if you don't water it, it doesn't bloom. So it's not, now it is drought resistant. So if we do have a drought, you just don't water it. It'll stay alive, but it won't be pretty and it won't flower. So in order to be pretty and flower, it needs to bloom. Plus, the last 2 years, we haven't seen as much sun as we normally do, and they've been getting a lot of mildew on the foliage. So the foliage has been turning white. You can see a few leaves on here that are kind of white-edged or white, and that's from mildew on them. We've been spraying them to keep the mildew off because that can ruin the foliage. So a nice tree, they tend to grow 15 to 20 foot tall and wide. So nice form. Good show of flowers if you water them. And hopefully this summer is not as gloomy as last summer. I don't think we broke 90 degrees at all, and we had this kind of cloudy, overcast weather it seemed like the entire summer. One of the coolest years summer-wise we've seen, and this tree would rather have it 90 to 100 degrees. Yeah. So we'll see what happens this year. We hope they do better for us. Okay, this tree I've grown for at least a decade now. Well, that tree is only 2 years old. The problem we have selling is that unless you know what it is, it's hard to sell because it doesn't bloom in the containers. Thividioides or giant yellow oleander. We have a bigger specimen along the fence, and these are the flowers on it. So these things can bloom from now through November, October, November, with flowers, clusters of flowers on the tops of each stem. They get ugly in the winter. This one did not drop all leaves. These are last year's leaves. I mean, the problem we've had the last 2 years is we didn't have a definite start to spring either year. It's like winter, more winter, slowly, you know, we've just gotten up to 75 degrees, and that's about it this year. Now, on most years in the past, especially when this does better, we had 90 degrees in April. And then it wakes up all the tropical stuff and gets it going with all the new growth on it. This thing hasn't woken up yet. Here it's June, and it just hasn't made any new foliage yet. Now, our big one along the fence line is blooming. The very top of the tree decided it would wake up and start making foliage and flowers. But the small one, I guess, down low, it's kind of cold. Well, this is not in full sun. That one's in full sun. But they grow about this form, typically 12 foot by 10 foot wide. But I have seen one in Mission Viejo that's almost 2 stories high. Maybe it could be 2 stories high, so about 20 by 15. And it's definitely a landmark tree there. Whenever you drive by, you say, "Whoa, you got the flowers on that thing." So John Yolen, a lot of nurses sell the smaller version of the Vitex peruviana, which has smaller salmon orange flowers and only grows maybe 6 to 8 foot. But this one's got the big. I'm sure in a mature plant, the flowers will be maybe half again as big. We assume it is. I mean, the original oleander was poisonous, but you rarely saw anyone get hurt by it because they say the taste of it is so nasty that no one would ever eat one. So the danger to people is minor. They said the only known deaths, some campers use sticks to skewer their hot dogs on it and it poison the hot dogs. But generally it's too noxious to eat. So, but yeah, flowers most of the year on this, except winter, throughout winter, they're bare. They can go bare. Again, this one was evergreen. The big one we had against fence line dropped its leaves. Depends on the situation, I guess. Now, a lot of these tropicals, it turns out when they're in the ground, they're a little better protected from the cold. So the problem we have in containers, especially the small containers, is that in the wintertime, the soil temperature is the same as the air temperature. Whereas if you're in the ground, you're warmer than the air temperature. So a lot of these tropicals act more evergreen in the ground than they do in pots. No. This one, these certainly are, but they're evergreen anyway. This is tropical. This is tropical.
So tropical is warm 90 degrees.
Well, tropicals, usually in the tropics, the condition there is you never drop below 57 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you have those conditions, the tropical plants never go to sleep. But this is a European plant. Gosh. Not much else is here from Europe. So this is Vitex. Or the chaste tree. So it's got a real distinctive odor, which is unforgettable. It's not bad, but it's very distinctive. You can pass that around and smell it. But it's yeah, kind of like perfume soap. Or so the Roman Catholic priests decided that if they sprinkled this on the beds of either other priests or young girls, they would remain chaste. I don't think it worked at all. So this is like a tree version of a Buddleia, the butterfly bushes. So it makes spikes of blue flowers. This one's a nice color, blue flowers. Normally they'd be in bloom by June. Again, we're off to a slow start this year. This is Vitex. I think it's called Delta Blue. Yeah. So it's a beautiful bluish, might have a slight mauve blue, but it's pretty nice blue color. Most of the family is either purple, white, or pink. And this is more of a blue tone. They do, as long as you deadhead the flowers on them, they just keep making more flowers. So they can bloom almost constantly on a mature plant from now through October. And they do grow about 10 to 12 foot high and wide. No. No, it does. Well, the flowers could attract the butterflies to them because of the blooms, but it's not something that monarchs feed on. So native to Europe. They were thought to be not as nice in the garden until a lot of people started noticing the flowers. Now they're become quite popular, especially in the south, deep south, or east coast, because the bloom is so nice. It blooms almost all summer, fall. So real good blooms on them, and it is deciduous. That's most of them. I mean, I did bring a ginkgo. I always like ginkgos, and they're slow growing, so for most small gardens, these will fit. So this is one we grew called Century. Yeah, this is in our soil. When we grow them in our soil, they turn out better, and then they have a nice yellow fall color. It's called Century because it tends to stay, at least when it's young, a nice tight spindle form. Leaves do turn yellow in the fall before they drop. And this is a male selection, so it doesn't have the smelly female flowers. Or actually, it's not the flowers that smell. If it's a female, it can make seed pods. In Asia, the seeds are a delicacy. But they do say when they fall on the ground, when the fruit, I guess it's a fruit, falls on the ground and starts rotting, it smells like vomit. So most people don't want the female trees, especially in public areas. But all the Asian people want the females. And nobody's growing them. All right, we'll show birch. I like birch trees. They're really pretty. So birch is Betula. This is native to Europe, or they call it Eastern Asia or Western Europe. So sometimes they call it an Asian tree, but it's all one big continent there. So Betula pendula, European white birch, or also known as silver birch. So the stems, when the initial bark peels off, it's white. But as they get older, the trunk starts turning black. So it starts to crack and make ridge lines, and then it's black on the oldest part of the tree, white for most of it. No special flowers or anything, but a nice, gorgeous look to it. Leafs out early in the year, usually February or March, it's in leaf. and then the leaves turn yellow in the fall and drop off. They usually don't get that big because they're short-lived also. So 25 years is about max, and the normal size of these trees tends to range from 15 to 30 foot tall and not quite as wide. And some specimens weep more than others. These were seed grown. There are some selections out there that have more weepy habit to them. And again, they just look better if we grow them. If I get them from another grower, the leaves never are this dark or green. They're usually more, I don't know, they're just not as green as what when we grow them.
Small, like the champaka or the birch, how would I do it?
Well, some trees take pruning well. Birches do not like to be pruned much. So be selective on how you do it, or just don't buy a birch if you want to keep it small. So birch trees are among the trees known to be the shortest lived because they don't heal their wounds. So if you chop off half of this tree, you'll probably kill it. You have open too many wounds up. Trees that live a long time tend to be better at tolerating pruning. So the main thing with most trees is when branches are skinny, pruning, it doesn't do much damage. But once you get a fairly good size trunk going, don't cut that because they don't heal that wound very well. So you can end up with the entire inside of the tree dying from a big wound. But if you cut small things, no big deal. So if you want to keep a tree small, just keep cutting it when it's young. But if you have a tree that once it gets big, don't just chop it and expect it to recover from that. A lot of these short-lived trees don't respond well to pruning wounds. Magnolias live a long time. I don't think magnolias have much trouble. And ginkgos live a long time too, so.
Previously, when we talked about avocado, we talked
Yeah.
so avocado,
Avocado trees from a stump, we call that stumping them. Well, I don't know, it probably shorten, anytime you do that to any tree, it shortens their life. But I don't know by how much on an avocado tree, because that was standard practice for quite a few generations. Okay, any other questions today? I think we covered everything here. All right, thank you. Thank you.